Yet she had learned them well, without realizing how much they had changed her, until the dance suddenly shifted as wave after wave of new migrants stormed their way in that summer, sending her scrambling to keep up with their arrivals. By August, so many of those creatures had squeezed inside the stables that even the powder room was not without them, despite blue toilet water, one of Mrs. Parkerhouse's signs, and tightly closed taps at the sink. Hordes of miller moths circled the vanity lights until they fell to their deaths, exhausted or fatally burned. Every morning, dozens of pale wings lay scattered across the marble counter, their translucent bodies powdering desperate prints on the mirror. Sparrows, too, had found a haven there, building nests in the heating vents with shredded toilet paper and Kotex, and lining them with hair and lint. She realized very quickly that the stables would not long withstand the constant agitation that migrants had brought to bear. The horseshoe carpet, once a dazzling scarlet, soon faded to a reticent rouge. White tablecloths suffered so many stains and tears that Viney could no longer spread a spotless backdrop to each diner's meal. Bemused by this turmoil, tobacco smoke clung so fearfully to the walls, floors, and ceilings that the air itself glowed an asthmatic yellow. Lights struggled out of their fixtures, and their bulbs glowed too brightly, burning out before their time. Plaster cracks webbed the walls, and chips of paint danced loose to settle on whatever would accept it. Door hinges that had never complained now issued loud protests, in solidarity with table and chair legs equally vocal in their discontent. At the same time, Viney could not have anticipated how this restlessness would affect everyone else in the stables. A constant hum hovered as customers started to pour in without end, a hum that grew louder as the cash flowed stronger. Fever glowed so fiercely in their eyes that Viney could not steer clear of the frenzy. Stray coins leapt from the floor into her hands, and overlooked dollar bills winged their way into her apron pocket. The familiar sense of currency, smells that before had been so common as to escape notice, now overpowered the air with sudden ubiquity, all because the signs left behind year after year were finally coming to fruition. Yet the very things those signs had once sought to preserve now proved obstacles to their ultimate end, to fill the stables with vast oceans of wealth until the whole place was drowning in riches. So separate were the worlds that she and Mrs. Parkerhouse occupied, it never occurred to Viney that one day she might see Mrs. Parkerhouse in the flesh. Later, Viney realized that she should have known she was bound to run across the woman, since of all the rooms in the stables, the powder room was theirs alone. Viney was sitting in the far stall, resting on the stool that moments ago she had wiped clean of bird droppings. As she leaned over to gather a spider web full of dead flies from the baseboard, she heard the powder room door hinges complain. Although it was too early for customers, the hinges had spoken in those firm, insistent tones reserved for someone with the power to relieve them. But their complaints grew quiet as the door swung back to silence. The stall's plantation shutters had not budged from the same half-open, half-shut position that they had been locked in for weeks. So the most that Viney could see was a narrow slit cutting across her vision of wide, flat lapels, white, woven cloth, and a garnet stick pin that sparkled like currant jelly. As she stretched forward for a different view, new details appeared. Iron gray waves of hair, thick black rims of glasses, a forehead crease many times over. She could have easily flipped back the door latch and stepped out before that woman who stood there clicking that tongue. Viney knew she could pass, unseen, like a slight breeze against the skin, or a shadow in the corner of an eye, momentarily glimpsed, then quickly forgotten. Or Viney could stare so frankly that in staring back the woman would be so scared that she would question the truth of her own eyes. But at the moment, it seemed the least harm would be to just let the woman alone. Viney had resigned herself to waiting when, gazing at the floor, her breath sucked in. Just beyond the shutters on the black and white tile floor lay 2 dead moths. In the past, other managers had been all too eager to gas the whole restaurant on such a discovery. But at those times, she had always had a chance to persuade the migrants to settle elsewhere before the Holocaust hit. She too would disappear until the air had cleared, sometimes for days. But she knew that once Mrs. Parker House found out, she would waste no time in saturating every nook and cranny of the stables with an arsenal of poison clouds, leaving no time for Viney to warn the migrants to leave. Fortunately, the powder room's inspection by those black rims abruptly ended as the plantation shutters on the other stall squealed and its door broke open and slapped shut. A pair of white lace-up shoes with thick soles appeared below the mahogany wall separating the 2 stalls. Heavy, pale hose outlined 2 slim ankles, the kind that young women had before children and other responsibilities thickened them like tree trunks. A steady rain fell into the toilet, drowning out the woman's slow, heavy breaths and the creak of those lace-up shoes. Coffee pittis competed with Glade Summer Bouquet air fresheners. Yet another one of Mrs. Parker House's signs. The latch dropped back silently as Viney eased her stall door open. She waited until she heard the toilet paper tear before she leaned over, straining against her own bulk, and snatched the soft, powdery bodies into her hands. "Stop right there," commanded a voice from behind the shutter. Viney let go of the stall door, which promptly slammed shut, its spring hinges too tight. Many latches inside the stalls had broken when the ladies had pulled too hard to get in, only to discover the sight of pantyhose puddled around someone else's ankles. Water whooshed and those white shoes squealed as the sound of cloth rubbing against cloth ticked in Viney's ears. In a moment, that voice behind the shutters would take on the fullness of a body, and Viney would finally see the whole of her, the one person everybody knew, but nobody, except maybe Billiard, the owner, actually saw. Viney rolled the moth between her thumb and forefinger, careful not to smash their wings, as she started for the powder room door. It wasn't that she lacked curiosity, for like everyone else, she had imagined her own picture of Mrs. Parker House's face, drawing from the vast pool of stable speculations to form features in accord with the silence she had left behind. Nor did Viney fear recognition, since it was a simple enough matter for her to be still, rag in hand, eyes cast down, the way all managers expected their staff to stand. Nor was it a matter of love or hate, for she had long ago accepted that Mrs. Parker House and her kind just was, like floods and humidity and earthworms. She did not need the proof of her eyes to know the fact of Mrs. Parker House's existence. In fact, it was out of respect that Viney eased open the powder room's newly varnished door, giving the hinges a break from their complaints, and fell in with the marching shadows that marked the passage to the taproom dining room. She didn't need further proof to affirm what she already knew to be true. Mrs. Parker House was a ghost from a past that loved the stables like a tooth. She tucked the 2 moths, now twined in death, into her apron pocket. She figured all Mrs. Parkerhouse would remember would be a work-splashed hand wiping the black and white tile clean. Mrs. Parkerhouse's poison would wait for some other day, when it didn't matter how deep it reached inside, when the walls themselves would take one long last inhalation, and in their collapse, blow that killer's breath back upon its